So I just came across Professor Math's Professor MTH. I'm not sure if I'm spelling it right. Anyway, his video a while back about liberal and moderate Christianity, and it brings up some biblical quotes that are that obviously I don't think any truly rational ethical person living today would agree with, and puts words in the mouth of God where he basically sanctions slavery or says that handicapped people will defile his sanctuary. um and saying, well, how, basically asking about our biblical hermeneutics and how we would how we grapple with that sort of thing, and how we choose some parts of the scriptures but not others. Um, Scripture is always a difficult issue for me because the way I came to Christianity was not through Scripture. It was through personal religious experience. I had some profound spiritual experiences having to do with Christ in my early 20s, and at the time prior to that, I was not really that interested in Christianity. I was more into Eastern religions like Buddhism and Taoism. Um, and so it's kind of going back to Scripture is almost kind of it's almost kind of an ad hoc affair for me. I mean, it's sort of very, my experience comes first, and then kind of looking at Scripture kind of helps me contextualize it a little bit. Um, but I take Scripture not as necessarily divinely inspired uh, any more than any other religious texts are. It's just that it's kind of, I see it as the testament of faith for a people. And when they put words in God's mouth, I don't necessarily believe in a God who actually speaks in as in some thundering voice through the clouds. I mean, I think God's what God does is he gives us inspiration, and he show and he's a source of creative novelty in the world. Um, and so, in a sense, I see God not so much in the individual passages in the Bible, but in the way God evolves in the Bible. That's there's this evolution uh, from this earlier tribal view of God, of God as the protector of Israel, towards this sort of universal God revealed in the Gospels. Um, and so, in a sense, it's that kind of eros, that upward movement towards greater value and greater progress, that is sort of where I see God most. Um, yeah, and I think that for me, it's not a matter of accepting or rejecting scriptures. I think it's the task is to engage in scripture, and so that's why I very much support biblical scholarship and biblical archaeology, and uh, investigating the texts, and understanding their cultural context, and what certain things meant in the context of their time. And in fact, I think liberal Christianity has been at the forefront of textual criticism of the Bible, um, more so than in really any other religion that I know of. I mean, uh, I don't know if uh, maybe it's just ignorance on my part. I don't know of that many Hindu scholars who do the same with the Vedas or the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, obviously there are interpreters of those books, but um, so the sort of historical criticism of the texts, it seems like that's much more profound, much more prominent in within Christianity, specifically under the sort of progressive Christian banner. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think the Bible was divinely inspired in a way, um, insofar as I also think that that many books were divinely inspired, and since any sort of creative inspiration that brings us that sort of helps us evolve towards the realization of greater value is divinely inspired. And so, in a sense, I believe in continuing revelation, and I get a lot of my theology not so much from the Bible, but from various theistic philosophers like Alfred North Whitehead. Um, but yeah, I'm able to look at the God that he at their theology and like look back at the Bible and understand like how God is understood. You know, it gives me a new way of looking at God and what exactly God is, what He does. So yeah, I guess I'm not really a scriptural Christian per se, but but it's not to say I reject Scripture so much as I believe in engaging in a Scripture in a way that is geared towards teasing apart facts and and religious inspiration because the Scripture because the Bible is it's not any one thing. It's not strictly a historical book, though there are historical parts to it. It's not scripture. It's not strictly a book of inspiration. That though I do find great inspiration reading things like the Psalms or the words of Jesus. Yeah, so it's not an either or thing for me. It strikes. I see Scripture as having a lot to tell us, but not so much at face value, but through disciplined scholarship and investigation. We, so I guess that's my thoughts for now. Peace.